All right, so welcome to the Best Places to Lead show. I'm Jerry McNamara, your host. So thanks for tuning in because we're on a mission to positively impact 5 million people over the next 4 years through better business. Now, I've never met anyone who showed up to work and said, I really want to suck today. Yet there's so many people who are ineffective and disengaged. And in my opinion, it's not their fault. It's the leader's responsibility to create compelling company cultures where people love showing up. And so that's why we have been working with senior leaders so we can learn how to build those compelling companies that are not only successful, but people love being there. And so that's why we come together. That's why the Best Places to Lead show exists. Guys like Dave Molenda are going to share with us the insights of having been an operator, ran a business for 27 years, did it successfully, went from 0 to 10 million, sold that business to his partner, and now has been advising companies. And so I think you have a really interesting perspective, Dave, of having been in the trenches, but also now to zoom out and to say, here are all the lessons that I've learned along the way. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jerry, for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. You ran a construction supply company, and Bill Holmes is in the house, the super fan. I love that you even put that on there, super fan. And Carol Ann Sharp is here too. I love Carol Ann Sharp. Anyway, you ran a construction supply company and you went from, growing that business over 27 years. The 2008 recession hits in a big way. And we go from 11,000 housing starts down to 1,000. And yet during that time, you were able to grow your business by 47% from 2008 to 2012. I think that's an incredible feat. So
it was fun.
Be a historian for me. How are you able to survive a 90% reduction in housing starts, yet still grow the business?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So 2007, obviously construction, the economy's humming along, everything's doing awesome. And then 2008 shows up and it's, if you can just imagine the spigot being turned off, 11,000, housing starts to 1,000 roughly in those numbers. We were about down 90%. That was really the lifeblood of our company. We really relied on that. We had some other pieces, but that was really one of our big, income generators. So as most companies think, they when they see that, they are like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Right? That's like your first question. And you kind of lay out your options. And so, my partner and I at the time laid out our options. We had 17 people on our team at that time. We were doing 5-6 million in sales. And we thought, we can close down, we can let as many people go as possible. Those were two options. And the third option, which really was the option that we ended up picking, was we can gain market share in this economy unlike anybody else. And so we did grow 47% to your point. And it was really done, Jerry, based on the thought that I came up with. I said, if I can keep my customer in business, they will keep me in business. And this is really where I started to get that passion to train and to teach and to coach, because, imagine a group of business owners that are great at what they do, but they really don't know how to build a team, or they don't know how to market. They don't know how to sell effectively. They just are good at what they do. In this case, they were great at building homes. They just went from one home to the next, to the next, to the next. And there was always somebody there waiting for them. Well, when that spigot shut off, they had to get creative. And some of them, because the housing had been booming for so long, a lot of the younger builders hadn't even experienced a downturn like this. So we made it our mission for the next 2.5 to 3 years to keep them in business. We trained them on everything we could: QuickBooks training, LinkedIn training, sales training, marketing training, anything that would help them keep their business together. And the cool part was, Jerry, is that it actually started to evolve into a group of people that wanted to keep showing up. It was a bi-weekly thing, and we kept having these people wanting to show up, and now they started to talk to each other. So an architect might be sitting next to a builder, and the architect said, hey, I got a plan that is coming out. Somebody's interested in building a house. Are you interested in building it for them? And it was like, oh my gosh, before you know it, all these connections were being made. Excuse me. And I think that's really where this took off. Was in that time we went from 17 people on our team to 22 people on our team. And then again, we went from 6 million, whatever that is, to 10 million is where we landed at the end of that. So, and it was because we kept our company, our customers in business. And again, that's what I love about being able to do it now. Is that's what I do every day, is find ways to keep people that I'm coaching in business, talking about growth, talking about, engagement, all those different things that are buzzwords in today's economy.
It's such a unique approach because, in days when I've been on the buying side, I used to laugh when people would walk in, or a sales rep or a national sales manager would walk in and say they'd like to partner. And I use the air quotes. They used to, I'd like to partner with you. And I would always say, that's a euphemism for, I want you to buy more shit from me.
Right.
And there wasn't always true value. In some cases there was, but there wasn't always true value. And I think it was such a unique approach that even in a massive downturn, you guys were able to grab that market share. Other than like the simple answer of like, we were just trying to keep everyone in business because that would keep us in business.
Right.
What inspired you to say, like, we're going to train people? This is the right path forward. How did that idea come to you?
Well, it's interesting. I was in one of the largest construction supply manufacturers in the world. I was with them. We were partnering on some things, and in their foyer, you saw the word partnership in there. So I did this presentation to them. And through that, I realized that the true definition of partnership is for you to participate in my gain, as well as you participate in my loss. And like you said, everybody's talking about, yeah, I want to partner with you as long as it's good for me. Well, as soon as a partnership turns bad, then no one wants to do it anymore, right? So we realized that partnership is not just me thinking about the positive, but it's like, what are you lacking right now? What are you missing? And we started to, again, realize that it's kind of like the remote control, Jerry. There's like 42 buttons on the thing. I know how to use 3 of them. And it's like really frustrating when I don't understand that. So it's that, QuickBooks is a prime example. I am not a QuickBooks person. Dana can attest that, she does all that for our group, and it's awesome. But the reality is a lot of our clients didn't know all the nuances, and they didn't know what they didn't know. So we brought in an expert that was going to tell them and train them and help their way through. And so if we get to be the best at everything that we can in our day, rather than just kind of struggling through it and again, only using a couple of the buttons on the remote, it's way better to understand that in depth, because you're probably losing money. You're probably not collecting money as quick as you can. Yeah. It's just, there's just no downside to educating your clients.
I love that. So you helped run that business for 27 years, right? And I think about all the hats that we have to wear, especially as we get things up and off the ground. And then as we start to get some shekels in the bank, we're able to like hand some of those hats off. What was one of the things that surprised you that you needed to grow or develop a skill, a talent, whatever it might be, that you didn't think about when you started the business, but it was necessary for your business to level up?
Well, yeah, it's funny because when I started, it was just me. So, I remember my first sale. I remember the first customer. I remember everything. I was like, wow, this isn't that hard, right? I don't know. It just happened, right? And I thought, this is pretty cool. And well, then it came time to deliver this product. And so I was like, well, it's just me. So I guess I'm going to be delivering the product, right? And so, I realized early on that I had to do everything. And probably the hardest thing for me was to actually start realizing that I had to let go. I never forget my partner said, "Hey, where were you?" And I said, "Well, I was just delivering something." He said, "What the heck are you doing that for?" And I'm like, "Well, who else is going to do it?" And he's like, "Well, there's trucking companies, there's other places." He listed off a couple things. And I was so honed in on just doing everything from start to finish that I never really realized that. So once I started to open that up, it changed everything, because then I'm realizing I don't have to invoice. I don't have to deliver. I don't have to service the product, right? And then you get into, I don't have to quote it. We have customer service people for that. We have outside, the group just keeps on growing as you get opportunities. So it just was a revelation to realize that you didn't have to do everything. And it was hard to let go. I mean, I have to say that was probably one of the hardest things, was because we all have this mindset as entrepreneurs that nobody can do it as good as us. And, and I'm just like, it's just delivering a box, dude, seriously. And I'm like, oh no, I can do it better, and I just, again, it was a blind spot for myself. It was just me tricking myself. But once I got the vision that that's not how to grow a business, because eventually one person can only do so much. And
that's right.
You're either going to work 24 hours a day, or you're going to find 3 other people to work 8 hours a day for the same amount of output, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're right. I call it the high achievers trap, where we think we have to do all the doing. And I remind people, you don't have to do all the doing. You have to resource the jobs to be done, but that doesn't mean that you have to physically do it. And so,
right. Yep.
Unless you want to be a business of one and have a threshold of, whatever being the bottleneck is, and you're going to deliver the product and make the product and sell the product, it's like, okay, that's cool if that's what you want to go do. But if you want to grow a true business beyond you, it certainly comes down to letting go some of those things. Well, other than your partner being able to say to you, hey, Dave, you don't have to actually deliver the product. Was there any mindset adjustment that you needed to make to be able to let go of those things? Because sometimes that becomes the constraining factor, that people feel like, they have to have those alligator arms and keep everything really tight and micromanage. Was there any like aha moment where you went like, okay, got it. Here's how I need to go do that.
Well, on our product in construction, a lot of products need installation of some point of some kind. So I realized that I'm not allowed to have a hammer. I'm not allowed, I have a screw gun, but that's only for, looks, they don't want me to use any of that stuff, So I realized if we wanted to grow, we needed to be able to rely on other people. So I got this vision in my mind, and it was actually, it's interesting because my son ran in college on the relay team. And the interesting thing was I started to realize that, wow, 4 people can run a mile faster than one person can. Even with the handoffs and all that, but 4 people running full speed and handing it off are quicker than one person running by themselves. And so the cool part is I realized that that's what goes on in business, right? Somebody runs for a while, hands off the customer or whatever, we'll say the customer in this point, and then they run with it for a while. Somebody else gets the handoff. And if it's successful, you didn't drop the baton. It was successful if you hand it off in that, in that zone where that was the spot that you had to hand off. So yeah, I realized that I couldn't do it. And I started to find, accounting I couldn't do, the installation I couldn't do. I started to look at what I couldn't do. And it was kind of refreshing because I was so worried about what I was doing. So if you're listening, try and find what you're not good at. It's, and be open with it and find somebody that's really good at it. I mean, I'm no good at producing a podcast, and I have an awesome producer in Dana she does everything I can't do. And all I do is the easy stuff. I press play, and
we might have lost Dave.
Technical difficulties.
This is literally the first time we've ever lost a guest. Dave, you're back.
Was it? That was quick. Sorry. I don't know what I did. I was just standing here. Sorry.
I think it's the rain in San Diego today.
Must be. Yeah.
It's not.
It doesn't know what to do in the rain. So sorry about that.
No. You were sharing that, figuring out the place where your unique ability is, and then starting to outsource everything else. And, your help with Dana she can do the production. You can be the pretty face and just press play.
be averse. She's way prettier than I am, but she's my daughter, so I can say that. Sorry.
I I don't doubt it, and I would expect you to say it. I think, we had a guest on, Tyler Pyga, and he went through a process where every quarter he cataloged all the things that he did, and he finally got down to a list after about 2 years of things that he was good at and that he liked doing.
Sure.
And every quarter he would just outsource everything else. I'm not good at accounting. Like, let's bring in a bookkeeper. And over time, so that he only spent time in his unique ability. And I think that process was one that I had never considered. But, at the end of the day, if you want to be really great at something, one of the things that I've learned is you can only be world class in subjects that you love, that you're passionate about, because you'll be curious about it and you'll be thinking about it. And how do I tinker that? And how do I make that better?
Right.
And I think you do yourself a disservice if you continue to do things where it's like, I don't really want to do that. And it's the last thing on your to-do list that you end up getting to. And so it's rushed and it's not good. And so getting to a place where you're only doing the things that you really love and that you're good at, I think is a great piece of feedback.
Yeah. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs never think ahead. They just want to do what's right in front of them right now.
Yep.
And that's where I think it's really helpful to find somebody, an accountability group, a coach, whatever, somebody to be able to come alongside you and help you with that, because, that's really challenging. Most people got out of corporate America for a reason, and then they get into what they're doing and they're so intensely engaged in that, whatever that is, that they forget about planning for the future. They forget about their growth opportunities. And that's, again, why it's so helpful to have somebody outside to be able to help you with that.
I think that's a great point. I'm going to tee you up, and it might be the answer that you just gave, but be a teacher for a second. What's the one thing that you would want to warn an aspiring entrepreneur about in running a company?
Well, I tell you, it's funny because I hear so often in my travels when people are building a business or building a team and they want to expand their team. So I hear a lot of people say, Dave, find me somebody just like me. I want to grow my team. If I had 10 more people just like me, I hear that kind of like, duplicate yourself type of thought process. Yep. And at first, on the surface, I get it. But the reality is if we had 10 Daves on our team, I would have Post-it notes everywhere, but nothing would get implemented because I'm an idea guy. I'm a thinker, right? So that's what I do. So I'm driving along and something pops in my head. So I quick text something to Dana. And then before you know it, she's like got this framework done for it already, right? If I didn't have that and it was just 10 of me driving around, there'd be all these ideas, but nothing would get done. Nothing would get implemented. So we use DISC a lot on the personality profile DISC. And it's nice because you can basically build a team with these different personalities so that you're able to, build the ideal team, because 10 Daves would sell a ton, but nothing would get implemented. Nothing would get done. Nothing would get invoiced for sure, which again, everyone would love that, but awesome. So Bill, you're doing a DISC workshop next week. That's awesome. And, that's where I think it's so powerful, is to be able to create your team, not just based on what they tell you they're good at, but what they actually are built to do. And that's what I think is so incredibly powerful when you're able to tap into that.
I think you're right. Diversity of perspectives is everything as you build out your team, because I'm sitting here chuckling myself. I'm probably not, we're more alike than I would care to admit, Dave, because I have Post-it notes all on my monitor.
Right. Exactly. And somebody's got to do those, right? And that's the thing but I understand it. We think work ethic and we think of engagement and all that. And we have to be really careful, because I ran into this a lot where I'm a talkative person. So if I encounter somebody in a meeting that's not talkative and they're very reflective, introspective, my immediate thought is, well, they must not be engaged in this. They must not be interested in this. And that's that surface discussion that's so painful and so dangerous, because I'm making an assumption based on what I see, and I'm way off. I mean, a lot of people that are introspective, they're busy listening, taking notes, thinking about what you're saying. But if I don't see some kind of outward response, then that's my blind spot where I make an immediate judgment. Wow, you must not be engaged in this. And they're like, well, that's not, nothing could be farther from the truth. So that's what I think is really helpful to really understand people at a deeper level.
I think you're right. I have companies that I work with that use predictive index or culture index or Enneagram or DISC.
Yep.
And, I don't care which one you use. It's just good to inform you. It creates some type of basis of better understanding one another and
Right.
a conversation point for you. But one of the things that I hear, and maybe you hear it too, is we're managing so many priorities as leaders and we get pulled in so many different directions. And one of the things that I hear is, yeah, I have, all this responsibility and accolades, but I don't make it home to dinner with my kids. I don't make it to their sporting events. And, that's a frustration for me. I know, you have a son and a daughter at least, because you've mentioned both of them.
Yep, that's it. That
how
I'm
do you-
aware of. That's all I know that
Yeah.
I'm aware of. So
We'll keep this underground.
sorry,
But
Dana.
but the truth of the matter is, with so many competing priorities, how do you go about keeping first things first? Any insights, any tips to try and say, hey, here's my life and here's what I'm trying to keep first things first, so that you don't get into a place where I've seen people resent their business.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, well, first of all, you have to be able to be self-aware of what it is that you want. So, doing a lot of work with emotional intelligence, there's not a lot of self-aware people. I don't want to be disrespectful. There's just not a lot of self-aware people. And if you don't agree with me, just on your drive home tonight on the freeway, notice all the people that they don't care about you. They want that 20 feet in front of you and they'll do whatever it takes to get it, right? But when you think about it from the business perspective, the team, it needs you. And, the reality is the question that I've been asked recently on my podcast is, what good is success without fulfillment? Okay. And we had this discussion about that. And it was like, wow, that's really intense. So if you think you know what success is, but yet you're not fulfilled at it, in the sense of you're not getting to, there's not, I don't want to call it a work-life balance, whatever, you can call it whatever you want, right? But if you don't have, number one, if you don't have some non-negotiables, like my wife and I have a Wednesday night date night that, it's got to be a pretty significant reason to blow that off. And, then I'm usually, if it's me doing it, then I'm compromising or asking, say, can we do it on Tuesday or Thursday? There's just some non-negotiables that us as business owners, hopefully we have. And if all those non-negotiables are business related and none of them are personal related, that's where I think you get out of whack. So if you're not fulfilled, what good is your success? I mean, that's kind of where I just ask that question, is what good is it? And so that's simple for me, I guess, but probably not so simple for people listening.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Success without fulfillment is the greatest business ripoff.
Yep.
And, if you become financially wealthy and emotionally bankrupt, I think you've lost the game. I think you didn't understand what the point of the game was. And so
Right.
being mindful of those things, it's why it brings that question to the front for me. Now, walk me through. It's amazing. You survive this downturn, you grow the company 47%, and you get to a place where you and your partner see the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk me through how that happened? Because I see people who sometimes do this well, sometimes don't do this well. But what happened that you decided to take a buyout on your side of the pie and walk away from the business?
Well, I tell you, it was interesting. So you fast forward through this, mess, and the economy starts coming back in 2011, 2012. And we looked back and we said, wow, we made it. You could look back and realize that you were successful. You grew your business, you built your team stayed intact, your customer base grew. I mean, all the signs pointed to, they were all positive green signs with the arrow up. And so my partner said, wow, I'm glad we did that. We did great. He said, now we can stop doing that education that we've been doing.
Mm.
And that was really odd for me because I fell in love with that piece, because some of it I was doing, some of it I was facilitating, some of it I was just getting the speakers to come in and do the work. But I fell in love with taking what I knew and helping other people with it at whatever level that was. And so that's what was really powerful. So I saw this fork in the road of either continuing on to kind of someone else's vision or creating my own vision. And, my DISC assessment says I get bored really easy. So it wasn't really that hard for me to try something new. But it was hard because it was 28 years of pouring something in. So it was kind of like, I guess divorce is probably the easiest word that I can think of. It was amiable. The odd thing was right after we had exchanged, the contract and the check and all that, where everything was done, my partner says, "So I'd like to hire you for 3 days a week to continue doing what you were doing." And I said, "Jim, you didn't want me to, I said, I hate to do this. My first, and if my wife knew this, she probably would have, hit me upside the head to not get your first, paid deal and get 2/3 or whatever it was, your salary, whatever. I can't remember what it was, but I just realized that it's my company and I want to work with people that I align with. And if I don't have alignment with somebody, I can't do it. And I'm fortunate and blessed to be in that spot where I can say no to people. But it was very eye-opening to be able to, on a Tuesday afternoon, around 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm sitting at this restaurant with my partner and he's like, "So what are you going to do now?" And I'm like, I don't really know. I got some ideas percolating in my head. But, the next day I just started making calls to people. And before you know it, people were asking me to do little things here and there, some sales stuff or some training things. And it just built from there. But if you're not aware of why you're doing it, I'll never forget somebody told me to always be thinking about your business. You're building it to sell it. And that was like hard at first, but then it got to be pretty easy. I was building this business to sell it, and then it happened, and then the rest was, it's been awesome. It was awesome then. It's even more awesome now.
I've been fascinated with this because, the first company that I helped run, I was a young person. We were raising venture capital. I was traveling around the country. And I became Mr. Soccer Post, right? People knew me around town, like that's who I was. And so my personal identity and my work life had become one piece. And it took me a long time to try and get those things to be separate, because that was my identity. Did you have that issue after 28 years, 27 years of running this business and being known in the community as, that's that guy? And I had to get to a point where it was like, I am not my work. And I think right now it's really healthy for people to maintain, a degree of separation between their work. I love my work. I'm take it very seriously, but I am not my work. And I had to get to a place where it was, what defines me is my family, my friends, and my values, not the work that I'm doing.
Sure.
Did you struggle with that at all?
Yeah. So it was interesting that you bring that up, because I spent a lot of time with the Sandler sales system throughout the years and got trained in that. And there was a piece of that really applies to what you said, because David Sandler said that a person is divided into two things. It's their image and their role. Okay. And so I thought about this, and he said, your image of yourself, you should always have a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. You should always have a 10 on your image scale, which means you always like yourself. You just have a positive piece. Now separate the role, because, hey, I might suck as a dad. I might suck as a husband. I might suck as a US citizen. I might not be very good. If I get a ticket while I'm speeding, my role as a good driver is not a 10. But it's interesting when you have a lot of these roles that give you a low number, it really starts to peck at your image of yourself. And so what I had to do was constantly I had to look back, because it was really hard to let that go. But I had to look back and think of all the positive things that came out of that. And sometimes that was enough. And quite frankly, sometimes it wasn't. I mean, I'm like, what did I just do? That was dumb. You were heading off into this great, you already had built this, and now you could just kind of rest a little bit and relax and enjoy the perks of being a business owner. But for me, those were few and far between, those tweaks of, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But it helped me to realign, to go back to my image. I'm still a 10, even though as a business owner, I might be a 5, or as a team player, I might be a 3, whatever. It was really helpful to be able to distinguish between my image of myself and the role that I played in other people's lives and in mine.
I love that distinction. I've not heard that before, and I think it's very clever, because you should have a positive image, and it comes back to your non-negotiables with yourself.
Yep.
How is it that you're showing up? How is it that you are going to make sure that the promises that I make to myself, I see myself in a positive light, which allows us to do then better work, to be the better person, or to show up in the way that we want to. And I think that's terrific. So now you've transitioned. You got really inspired about doing the training.
Yep.
And so I think the fun part about this, and I share this with you because I've run 5 businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a really good context on B2B, B2C,
Sure.
products and services. And I think, being an operator allows you to bring a perspective that you can't see when you are in the soup. And,
Yep.
10 or 12 years ago, I wrote about this, that my biggest mistake as a senior leader was that I never had a business coach, a business mentor, a business roundtable, long before I ever conceived the notion that I might, try and advise companies. Tell me about, for you, what do you think CEOs get wrong in today's business world?
I think you just hit it on the head. They're so islandy. They want to be on the island. Most of them are still in that spot where they just want to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. Nobody can do it as good as me. I don't need any help. I mean, I think about 2 golf swings. I think about, Tiger Woods, what a beautiful swing he has, but yet he's got a swing coach. Because
right.
If they're off a degree, that's going to, affect his game. Well, that's one swing that the average onlooker would be like, you don't need a golf swing coach. You're perfect. Well, then there's Charles Barkley. So anyone that's ever watched Charles Barkley, Google it if you haven't, because it's one of the funniest swings in the game. It doesn't take a pro to look at that and say, oh my gosh, dude, you need some serious help on that golf swing, And I think the blind spot that CEOs have are the fact that I'm fine. You know what? Our business is fine. Everything is fine. And then you ask the question, have you talked to your team lately? No. If they know that, if there's a problem, they can come to me. And I tried that with my wife, and I said, hey, the day we got married, I said, I love you. And if something changes, I'll let you know. And that just doesn't work, right? We have to do this, I love you, on a regular basis. And the problem is we don't do that a lot of times with our team. We don't give them accolades. We don't compliment them. We don't encourage them. We just kind of sometimes would push them down because we might be threatened by what they are. So I think a lot of times CEOs could improve their vision and their relationship with their team to the point where, I call the internal team, I call that an internal customer. And then that customer is the external customer. A lot of people are starting to use that. I obviously didn't create that. I just think that if a CEO looked at, Marion customer service the same way that he looks at Jim, his best customer, if he looked at those 2 identical, it would be earth shattering for that team. And they would go places they never imagined.
I think that's awesome. How do you build an effective team? I mean, you took a company from 1 to 22, you did it over a long period of time. I'm sure you saw people come and go in doing that, but how did you do it? What were some tips that you say, like, here are the non-negotiables. If you're going to run an effective team, here are the things that you should be doing day in and day out, or on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. What are those things?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some. I think being empathetic with people is really key, understanding that they're people. I hate seeing people being referred to as an employee number or as a part, they're not Dave. I mean, even just calling somebody by their last name, it's like, man, that just to me is so disrespectful. I have a first name, I have a life. I love when customer or CEOs get involved to the point where they understand more about your family. They understand more than, oh man, I know you're married and I think you got 2 kids, but boy, what are their names? I love when it's like, hey, how's your wife doing? How did Johnny do last night in soccer? When you're in that intimate level of communication and connection with your team, oh man, that tons of stuff happens positive. So I just like to try and build that connection. I think a business owner, a CEO, C-suite, anybody that reports to them, if you want to use those words, if we're not connected with that person, we definitely are not going to be nearly as successful as if we would have that connection.
I always find it interesting, people who sometimes see other people as, oh, I hate that I have to work through that person, or that person's a problem or a challenge. And, my experience is that person probably shouldn't be leading people. They should be an individual contributor, and we need lots of them.
Yeah.
But if you are not genuinely interested in people as quote unquote your product or your customer, internal or external, then I think, you miss the mark as a leader of what's possible in building your team to be successful over time. And
yeah,
it's something I see all the time.
Absolutely. And if you're not, I mean, I love the book People Over Profit, because it proves with the research that if you treat your people right, profit shows up. Because so often we have this thought process that, it's got to be people or profit, and I just did a workshop on how important it is to be, complimenting your team, and what kind of, when someone works in a safe environment, their engagement goes up, the customer engagement goes up. It's like, there's no downside to it. And a lot of that stuff you can do for free. It's not like you have to dole out a bunch of money to say, hey, man, Jerry, I saw what you did, or I heard you on the phone the other day with John Smith. That was awesome. You rocked that. Just that kind of exposure is so powerful. And I encourage people, do it every day. Find somebody to say, you did a great job. If you can do that, if everybody did that every day, it'd be crazy where this world would be, I think.
I think you're right. As a tactical thing, I used to have 2 slots on my calendar at 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock to go walk the floor.
Yep.
and to give people specific feedback about the work that they were doing, how they were doing, because it does make a difference, and people want to be seen, known, cared for authentically. I think is super powerful in building teams.
Well, especially because Gallup said 2 out of 3 people on your team show up every day not engaged in their work, right? So, and again, if you have, let's say you have 30 people on your team, for easy math, 20 out of those 30 people are not showing up engaged. And I think, to your point at the beginning, Jerry, that's on leaders. I really kind of push back to leaders, because it's easy for me as a leader to say, oh my gosh, if they just would work harder. It's like, dude, if you would just be nicer, why don't you start being nicer and see what happens, rather than, what comes first, like the chicken or the egg. And it's like, man, just be nice, be nicer, be genuine, understand them, be empathetic. And it's crazy what would happen.
I totally agree. My first value is love your people and treat them as whole people.
Yep.
I have found over the whole course of my career, when you do that and you get that piece right, everything just magically falls into place. People are happier and, a little bit luckier and, a little bit more talented. So I totally agree there. Well, walk me through, I think communication is such an important part of leadership. And generally, people are not great communicators to create that clarity of how people win.
Sure.
Do you have any communication tips that you can share with us? Because I'm always looking for ways in which to help people communicate better, to communicate more clearly. And it's not about what I say, it's about what's understood on the other side.
Sure. Yep.
To create that alignment between the two of us.
Yeah, so we do like a 10 tips to better communicate workshop. And it's funny because I had one guy come up to me, Jerry, and after I got done with this training, and he comes up and he's got to be the first guy up there, right? He's like, Dave, I just want you to know I didn't learn anything. And I'm like, wow, I mean, I was fortunate to be able to be thinking on my feet. I said, you know what, sir, it wasn't what you learned. It's how much of this are you practicing? And then all of a sudden, kind of the lights went on because, it's easy to look at communication and say, I know that, I know that, I know that, I know that, right? But it's really hard to enact those. 85% of our success right now today is not due to our drive, our education, or even our passion. It is due to how well we can communicate. And we've all been in situations where people they have a great message, but they cannot articulate it effectively. And I think about it simply as, hey, if we would have started this podcast and when you introduced me, if I would have started in a language that you did not understand, Jerry, how long would it have been before something you would have been raising your hand, pausing the show, kicking me off? There would have been something like, dude, I don't know what you're saying. And that goes on so often in communication. And back to DISC, there's different styles. So one of the great communication tips is understand the style of the person that you're talking to and try to mimic that, try to help them. Again, think of it from a language perspective, I need to speak your language in order for you and I to have an intelligent conversation. So I think that's a great one. And I think the reverse of communication is listening. We don't spend enough time honing up on our listening skills. And I think one of the great tips that I share and that I learned over the years is that hopefully it's way more successful to listen with the intent to understand rather than with the intent to reply. And I know that when somebody's talking, for me, I struggle because there's all these things going on in the back of my head. And then if I'm thinking of my answer before I'm done, the person's talking, I can't hear them and concentrate on my brain at the same time. So I think listening is really powerful.
It's a skill that I hone every week when I have a guest here, to stay so focused and so present to hear what you're saying,
right?
Because it's easy to be thinking about the next question and where am I going to guide the conversation, and then you miss all the magic that happens in the dialogue. And for me, that is something that I'm constantly working on to say, what is Dave teaching? How am I learning? How am I practicing my communication skills? Because those are the gold nuggets that come out of doing, things like this, where you're getting better and better together.
Well, and I try really hard. The same thing on my show is to listen. Full disclosure, I have to re-listen to the podcast after because I'm so intent on the questions that I miss all the good answers. So I'm like, crap, I got to listen to it again. So, but we don't get that, we don't get that luxury. That's why I want to bring that up. We don't get that luxury, especially like if we're in a sales situation and a customer or a prospect is telling us a bunch of information, how to sell to me, how to communicate with me, how often to reach out. They're going to give you a bunch of that information. And if all I'm doing is thinking about what I'm going to say next, I'm missing all that powerful information. So that's definitely a tip that I spend my life trying to improve for myself.
It's like meditating. That's why they call it a practice. Because, 30 seconds in, I'm thinking about butterflies.
Right, exactly. Or is the speaker working or blah, blah, blah. And you can miss it real easy.
So true. So, you've been around the C-suite yourself and, advising companies. One of the things that I've been fascinated with recently is really thinking about what's the difference between a CEO and an entrepreneur.
I don't know the answer. I mean, I think about, I know for me, I would say like a CEO is usually part of a system, where the entrepreneur usually is creating the system. I mean, entrepreneurs are pretty darn inventive, right? They know how to do stuff. They know how to fix things. They know where they want to go. They might not, know all the steps, but they know sometimes what that end looks like. I feel like a CEO is just part of a cog, one of the cogs, one of the C-suite, CEO, CFO, C whatever, how many ever there are. I feel like CEO and entrepreneur can be the same, because you can be like the CEO of your own company as an entrepreneur. But I just think the difference to me would be one's really more part of a bigger system. And I almost feel like a CEO, and no offense to CEOs listening, I don't feel like they would have the amount of change agent that an entrepreneur can have, because they're so stuck in this big, massive machine that, the only way they can stop the machine is literally take themselves out of it. Then the other cogs stop. So what have you found?
I like it. It was one of the entrepreneurs that I work with when we were here in Jacksonville. We had all the entrepreneurs in, and he asked the question, and it literally stopped me in my tracks. I was like, that's really interesting, John. It was John Cavendish from Seller Candy asked the question. And it's just something that I've been thinking a lot about, the transition from entrepreneur. And one of the versions of that answer that I've come up with is, I think entrepreneurs are the risk takers. They're the ones that inject risk into the company. And having been both the entrepreneur and a brought-in CEO in different stages of my career, I think the CEO is the one that removes risk from the business. We're going to keep the plates spinning. We're going to get the systems moving. We're going to make sure that all the systems and process are running, and we're going to defend our turf against the competitors. And the entrepreneur is just trying to come in and break things again. It's like, wait a second, we just got everything working. And so I don't know. That's the first working definition that I have kind of between those two things. And sometimes you have people that can make that transition from entrepreneur to CEO. It's very unusual. Bill Gates has done it. Mark Zuckerberg has done it. But most people are the risk takers first stage, get it up and off the ground, and then hand it off to, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go do something else, or put me as a delivery driver, because I love doing that every day.
Yeah, I think the vision that I got when you were talking was, to me, entrepreneur would be like the one to slay the dragon, and then the CEO is kind of going to cut it up and going to process that,
Ooh,
and
that's a good one.
I just feel like, it's just fun. I love slaying dragons. I just got to say, that adventure. I love that, And if you don't have that, there's no problem. Not everybody has it. You find what your passion is and what you're really good at doing and what you love to do, and go do it, whether it is slaying the dragon, or, sharpening the blades, or aligning the troops, or whatever, dispersing the dragon meat, whatever it is, everybody's equally important.
Amen. So tell me this, you have all of these experiences, and then you get to the crazy idea, I'm going to write a book, which became a best-selling book called Growing on Purpose.
Yep. Crazy it is.
Why did you write that book? What was the business problem that you were trying to solve or shine a flashlight on for people?
So when we were going through our growth, I created this formula that said, if you strengthen the team, it was S&T plus ICE, which is improved customer experience, equals P for profit. We came up with that in our business, and I'm like, that is really powerful. So I started to look at strengthening the team, and I started to look at improving the customer experience. And there's a lot of research done on these individually. There wasn't much research done on how they affect each other. And that's what we focused on, because it's safe to say that a good team is going to produce a good customer experience, just like a bad team is going to produce a bad customer experience. And that's where I think it was really powerful to make that connection. And then it equals profit. People want to know, what's my ROI? If I'm going to invest in my team and I'm going to invest in my customer, there better be money at the end. And, the research shows there definitely is money at the end. So that's the intention of the book.
I love it. What did you learn while you were writing that book? Were you like, oh man, I hadn't come up with that insight before, but that's really clever.
I learned that I'm not an author, I'm a writer. So, there's a huge difference between that. So I let other people, like on my next book, I'm letting someone else, my ideas are up here. And and to wordsmith it correctly, to do all of that, I didn't have the patience or the interest in it. But I thought it was interesting when I got digging into it to realize that there are a lot of things that entrepreneurs can do for their team to help their team that doesn't cost money. Because we're always so worried about, I can't afford this and I don't want to spend this and we don't have the budget for that. I get that, but most of the stuff that you can do doesn't cost money. And that's what I think is so powerful. Like you said, giving a compliment to somebody doesn't cost a penny, but it can save a working relationship. It can change somebody's day. And, they're just wanting to come to work, and like you said, people that say, I want to suck today at work. There aren't people that I don't think say that, but there are sure people that are quick to say it's not my job. They're quick to spend 30 minutes in the bathroom trying to avoid any opportunities of work. And again, those are the disengaged people, and the statistics bear that out. To flip somebody from disengaged to engaged is the owner's or leader's responsibility. And that's what we love to help people with.
I love it. You have another book coming out. Give us a little snapshot, a teaser of what you're thinking, what you're learning, and what you want to share.
Yeah, so we are doing a business fable, and it's about a motorcycle dealership in San Diego, of all places. And it's all about business blind spots. And so it's really unique because there's characters in the book, and they all have their own blind spots. And what does that do to the team? What does that do to the customers? So we don't know what blind spots we have, right? I mean, Jerry, if I said, hey, what are your blind spots? Dude, I don't know. I don't know. That's why we need somebody to kind of help us. We have mirrors in our car that help us with our blind spots. So, we just need a mirror in our business to be able to help us with our blind spots. So the book will help you to be able to identify and come up with some interesting and creative ways to, identify the blind spots and then fix them.
I love it. I know where all my blind spots are, Dave. I just asked my wife.
Okay, she'll tell you, right?
She tells me all of them, and I'm grateful for all of her insights, because she's seemingly always right. It's annoying, quite honestly.
Yeah, no, and I get that. It's just that that's rare, and I think we talked about that on our show together. That's pretty rare, and I try to tell people, hey, don't put that pressure on a spouse. What are my blind spots? I mean, that's a really loaded question. Now, maybe what are my blind spots as a spouse? That's different than what are my blind spots as an entrepreneur or part of my business. Unless you're in business together, which, probably most people listening aren't, find somebody that will help you with your blind spots, because those are sometimes the biggest opportunities for growth, is coming up with some solutions to your blind spots.
I think you're 100% right. Perfect. So many good ideas that you shared. If people want to find out more about you and the work that you're doing, where can we send people?
Sure. Yeah. PositivePolarity.com is by far the easiest place. We're redoing our website, so it'll be refinished here in the next few weeks. And then I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So be happy to, answer anybody's questions or meet with people. I usually do an hour up front for no cost, just to kind of help fix as much as I can. So, if somebody has a question, be more than happy to help as best that I can.
I love it. I might hop on an hour-long call with you just to
Sure.
Have you poke holes in our business. I think that'd be super fun. Listen, we'll put these in the show notes. I know Maria's going to take care of that for us, but I think everyone should be thinking about, how do I get better? And, we don't do life alone. And so whether it's Dave or someone around you,
Yep.
ask for help. It's the best thing that we can do. And
Absolutely.
I'm not great at asking for help. So I'm going to ask for help right now, because I'm on a mission to positively impact 5 million people over the next 4 years. And if you've enjoyed this, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, to hit like, to maybe write a review of the podcast. I'd love for you to do that, because again, we just want to make the world a better place through better business. And I won't do that alone. And I need your help to go do that. So Dave, I thought you were terrific. Thank you for
Thank you.
being here and sharing your wisdom. Now, next week, here's what I'm going to be talking about. Last month, I did a deep dive on decision-making and how to make better decisions. And so this month, one of the 11 leadership competencies that I've outlined, I'm doing a deep dive on execution and using the 5 T's of execution as a coaching framework to help your people improve their execution. And so I'd love for you to join us next week. I'm going to walk you through what I'm learning, what I'm thinking about, the frameworks that I'm trying to put together, because if you really want to ease the burden of leadership, you really have to have frameworks that you can point to and say, here's the thing that's going wrong. It just makes your work easier. And when you have that alignment and you've been explicit in the frameworks of how we operate our business, then it just makes everything go smoother, faster, and farther together. So hopefully you'll join us next week. Thanks again, Dave. Great to see you.